stage process to take us where we are. The first process was the Mandela days, where it was the Rainbow Nation, and we were all very excited, and there was elation, and we needed to bring capital because we were going to build the nation. So we are going to not only build the nation, but we're going to sign agreements like crazy. And we're going to sign with everyone so that we give them confidence. We give the investors confidence to come here. Those bilateral investment treaties that were signed at the time were hardly ratified. So they were more like a token of confidence. Then came the Mbeki era, and then the business forum was already created, and we really needed to engage in a policy that was going to say, what are we going to do with the money that's coming, and how are we going to protect it? And also we need to jump in the bandwagon of the international investment courts and the arbitration and all those things. So some of them were signed, some of them entered into force, but then this was like an inertia type of time. Like, oh, we're signing these, we don't really know what they are for, and maybe we'll do some foreign FTAs and some BATs, and some entered and some didn't. And then there was a wake-up call. South Africa, wake up. You have signed all of these, you have joined all these international obligations, and we're going to enforce them now. So there was one landmark case that was like an alarm for everyone, and that was the Pietro Foresti versus South Africa. So they, in just a quick brief, they said, your new government is impinging on my investment rights because with your new act of mineral rights, I lose, and therefore you need to pay. And you need to pay with cost, and we're going to exit, and we're going to have this massive costly arbitration where you cannot know who the arbitrator is, but they're also the legal counsel of some of these companies, and you need to respect our investment or die. And South Africa realized that the state can be liable for advancing the rights, for protecting the people, and for redistributing, for taking public policy, basically. And this is, if you are thinking of economic law, this is a very good parallel with Article 20 of the GATT. That also had a very similar evolution internationally. So South Africa say, no, we're going to then, in the Zuma era, the 2010 forwards, we cannot do this. We're going to join the club of failed states. We're going to join Venezuela, Vietnam, Bolivia, and Ecuador, and we're going to denounce all our bilateral investment treaties. And that means we're going to go out of that regime, and instead we're going to make a policy of international investment that first lets us choose what type of investment we want to attract, how are we going to protect it, and how we can manage it without impinging on the rights of our people, and on the rights that we are interested in advancing throughout this transition. And there has been a lot of legal framework around it, and then there is the model BAT, and it is still being reorganized. There is still a lot of process happening. But what I want to highlight, and the key point of this section that I've just mentioned, is South Africa has taken a very bold policy approach. And that is, we are going to go out of the international club of investment. We're going to go down of that bandwagon. We're not protecting the investors anymore because we have a specific policy that is internal and that we have to advance, protect. In Colombia, we are at the first stage. So we are where you were 20 years ago. So we are at the Mandela moment, where we're going to sign and sign and sign, and we're going to decide later what's going to happen. But this is advancing very rapidly, and the investors are very well aware of the protection. So they are wanting to have their own the rights protected as per Colombia's compromises. And we have a handful of cases, and they are now a handful, but they are growing and creeping up on Colombia, and they are creeping up against the transition and working against us. And now we are against the time and against the investors. So most of these investors are surprise mines. And I highlighted Glencore because it's a South African one. And they are looking for the protection of rights in natural reserves and in water places. And there's only one that's about the return of infrastructure. So they want government to pay for infrastructure that they put 20 years ago. That's already irrelevant. But they lost the concession, so they're angry and they're suing the government. What Colombia can do, and it's not a failed state, and I really want to go there because in Colombia there has been this very big fear about don't do anything that will make you like Venezuela. Same as here, they tell you, don't do anything that will make you like Zimbabwe. Ah, careful. So this is a conscious decision that the Colombian policymaker has to do, and it's a conscious decision that the Colombian judge has to take into account when they are looking at the implementation of bilateral investment treaties. And I want to mention here one specific case. Why do I think this is so very relevant? Because the reasons why the countries come out of it, of the bilateral investment treaties, is because they really do affect the implementation of human rights. So in Bolivia, the case of Aguas, it was a case that wanted to privatize the water, even the rain. And there's a movie, go look for it, it's called Even the Rain. And they were fining the peasants for gathering rainwater. So this really sounds like from a post-apocalyptic novel, but it did happen. And the government said, we cannot afford to not allow the people to gather rainwater, basically. And so the government came out of it, and it immediately was labeled as non-compliant with international commitments. It's a country that is not complying with international economic policy. But we need to understand that the economic causes, the economic root of this conflict is the deep inequality and poverty that the elites have had forever in Colombia and for many years in South Africa. So if we want to make the transition happen, we have to think what type of investment we want from the policy side, and why do they need enhanced protection? Why does not the national treatment suit them? And if it doesn't, are those the capitals we want to create? And is that sustainable development? And then I think the investment regulations and the investment discussions have to be seen under the light of the constitutionalization of the transition and of the constitutional light bulb that has to see all our interactions. So I would love to see more economic research into this, although there has been a lot. And Colombia has a lot of political science to also add to the question of how can we make this transition into private law work so that the rights are guaranteed. So with that, any questions?
Thank you very much. Thank you.